Hello and welcome to another Beyond Shakespeare First Look Exploring session. Today, this is the second session exploring, I was going to say the famous play, but I don't know how famous it was, Fortune by Land and Sea by Thomas Heywood and William Rowley. And, well, if you want to know what happened before this, because we're starting at Act 2, Scene 3, go to the first video of this series because it's quite complicated and there's a lot of action compressed into just like all those from Act 1 to Act 2. It's just, yeah. It's not even action, it's more plot. There's just so much going on in those scenes that two people die, that kind of thing. Just casual facts. There's a marriage, there's a death, there's revenge. Two deaths. Thank you for correcting me. And
two marriages.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's more, but I mean, you can go watch the video and then come back to this one which is a very awkward place to start, personally. So I shall proceed with introducing our readers. So reading The Clown and Merchant today we have
Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up. It's Constantine from sensational Saskatoon, Saskatchewan.
This is getting complicated. Reading Anne Harding and The Gentleman we have
Brian Myers from Portland, Oregon.
Reading John and Forrest, so basically Young Forrest, we have
Rachel in Canada.
Reading Susan, Old Harding, and Purser, we have
Lois in London.
Reading Philip, Goodwin, and Clinton, we have
Hi, I'm Lynn, and I am practically neighbors with Brian in the Pacific Northwest of the United States.
I like that idea. Reading William, Foster, and a Pursuivant, we have
Alan in Suffolk.
And I'm your host, Eric Karoulla, for today. I'm Eric Karoulla every day, but I'm your host for today. Grammar. It's such a strange thing, isn't it? I'll be reading Old Forest, just because we are a reader short, and I will be reading everything else. So without any further ado, Act 2, Scene 3. Enter William and Philip.
Now, wilt trust me that point, Philip? I could find in my heart to beg thee of my father to wait upon me, but that I'm afraid he cannot spare thee from the plough. Besides, I heard him say but the last day that thou wast more fit to make a hind than a serving man.
Sir, you were once my brother.
True, but that was when you were a son to my father.
Aye, and my younger brother, I had the priority of birth.
But now it seems to have got the start of you, for, being but a servant, you are taken a buttonhole lower.
When will this tedious night give place to day?
I hope I may come on.
I must obey.
Enter John and Susan.
My string, Sue. Are these shoes well mundified? Down your marrow bones. Good Sue, I hope you are not so straight-laced, but you can stoop. You acknowledge me one of your young masters. If not, 'tis unknown to you that I know the way to my father.
Yes, sir, and can tell tales. I know you can, and I have felt the smart on't.
Whip me if you shall not. If you begin once to grow stubborn. Why then?
As humble as your feet.
He kneels to tie John's shoe. Enter Anne Harding.
Why, how now, maid? Is this work fitting you? And you, sir, you are looked for in the stable and should not loiter here. Will you be gone?
I am for any service.
And I too.
We shall find other things for you to do.
They both exit.
If you cannot, hear me that they can. Drudge, a groom, I'll send him of my errands.
And if I do not find work for her, I'll do nothing but take tobacco in every room, because twice a day I'll make her clean the house.
And they both exit.
These think, because I am their stepmother, their chiefest torture is my most content. When I protest to see them thus afflicted, it grates my very heartstrings every hour. For though before their father's ruthless eye and their remorseless brothers I seem stern, yet privately they taste of my best bounty, and other of my servants are by me hired to o'ercome their chiefest drudgery.
Follow,
Follow!
follow.
Hello. Oh, I
Enter
remember those.
young Forrest with his weapon drawn.
I am pursued, and there's no place of refuge left to my desperate life. But here's a woman. Oh, if she harbor soft, effeminate pity, she may redeem me from a shameful death.
A man thus armed to leap my garden wall? Help! Help!
As you are fair and should be pitiful, a woman, therefore, to be moved, a Christian, and therefore one that should be charitable, pity a poor distressed gentleman who gives his desperate fortune, life, and freedom into your hand.
What are you, sir, that thus with your weapon drawn affright me?
If you protect my life, fair creature, I am a free gentleman. But if betray me, then a poor man doomed unto a shameful death.
What's your offense, that such suspicious fear and timorous doubt waits on your guilty steps?
I've killed a man, but fairly, as I am a gentleman, without all base advantage in even trial of both our desperate fortunes.
Fairly?
And I thought, though I say it, valiantly.
And hand to hand?
In single opposition.
In a good quarrel?
Else let the hope. I have in you a safety. Turn to my base confusion, gentle creature.
Follow!
Cry within, follow, follow.
I cannot now stand to expostulate, for hark, the breath of my pursuers blows a fearful air upon my flying heel, and I am almost in their fatal grip. Say, will you save me?
I will. Then climb into that hovel.
Oh, anywhere.
Nay, quickly then.
Your hand, fair lady?
Away, leave me to answer for you.
And she sits down to work, and young Forrest disappears into, well, basically exits off stage. Enter Old Harding, Goodwin, Foster, and non-speaking officers.
Over my garden wall is possible?
Over this wall, I saw him leap it lightly.
That we shall quickly know. See, here's my wife. She can inform us best.
Saw you not, Mistress Harding, a young man mount o'er this garden wall with his sword drawn?
My eyes were steadfast on my work in hand, and trust me, I saw none.
Perhaps he took down to the neighbor village, and when he saw my wife, altered his course.
'Tis very like, for I heard a bustling about that hedge, besides a sudden noise of some that swiftly ran towards your fields. Make haste, 'twas now, he cannot be far off.
A gentleman, take my word. I am high constable. It is part of my office. I'll be no shelter for any man that shall offend the law. If we surprise him, I will send him bound to the next justice. Follow you your search.
Farewell, good Master Harding.
Your word's sufficient without further warrant. Continue our pursuit, all way to Lade, and ere he reach the city, shall be stayed.
Adieu, good friends.
And basically Goodwin and Foster and everyone who is chasing him exit.
Pray, what's the business, sir?
2 gentlemen went into the fields to fight, and one hath slain the other.
On what quarrel?
I had small leisure to importune that, only thus much I learnt. The man that's dead was great in fault, and he that now survives, subject unto the danger of this search, bare himself fairly, and his fortune being to kill a man allied to noblemen, and greatly friended, is much pitied, but law must have its course.
If this be true, I thank my fate and bless this happy hour to save a life within law's griping power.
Come then, the morning's bleak and sharp the air. Into the fire, my girl, there's wholesome heat. I'll in and see my servants set at meat.
Sir, I'll but end this flower and follow you. If this should be some bloody murderer, great were my guilt to shroud him from the law. But if a gentleman by fortune crossed, 'tis pity one so valiant and so young should be given up into his enemies' hands. Whilst greatness may perhaps weigh down his cause and balance him to death, who thus escaping may, when he hath by means obtained his peace, redeem his desperate fortunes and make good the forfeit made unto the offended law. Prove as heaven shall direct, I'll do my best. 'Tis charity to succor the distressed.
And young Forrest enters above. Presumably Harding has exited, otherwise, he'd already be in trouble.
Fair mistress, are they gone? May I descend?
No safety lives abroad. Then pray forbear to speak escaping hence.
Oh, but I fear.
My life for yours.
However poor I fare, may you of this your charitable care taste happy fruit.
You did not kill him foully,
No, I protest.
nor willingly.
I willingly fought with him, but unwillingly did I become his deathsman.
Could you now wish him alive again?
With his hands loose, and yet he slew my brother.
Heaven hath sent this gentleman because he's penitent to me for succor. Therefore, till the violence of his search be past, I'll shroud him here. I'll bring you meat and wine to comfort you. Free, I protest, from all unchaste pretense, till by some means I may convey you hence.
The life you save, if I overcome this plunge, shall be forever yours. All my endeavors to your devoted service I will store and carefully hoard up.
Sir, now no more.
And they exit. Well, that's an interesting turn of events. I think Lynn has things to say.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious that something is going to happen to old Harding before the end of the play, and Anne Harding and young Forrest are going to get together. I mean, you can tell by the way he talks to her from the beginning that
Yeah.
he finds her attractive. Even in his distress, he keeps calling her fair. So, yeah, and they're basically both decent people. So, generically, they're people we want to end up happy. So that's my prediction, is that they end up being a couple somehow.
And that would be that's an interesting prediction. Constantine, then Brian. Sorry.
Well, interesting. In the first part, we saw Philip, and he's fallen on his fortune. Now we have young Forrest has fallen on his fortune, and it's interesting how they're both sympathetic characters. They seem to have great values, and I like how Anne asks him, "How did you kill him? Did you kill him honorably? Was it hand in hand?" And it's interesting. This word "gentleman" keeps coming up, and it's not connected to money and fortune, but character. So if Philip, who still loves his father, still respects, he's accepted a lower role, and now we have Forrest, who's also fallen into hard times. But we also have Anne, who's sympathetic. We also have to remember Anne is probably closer to, as Lynn said, there's something happening there, and he seems closer to Anne's age than old Harding. So I like this what the play is doing. I mean, it's not what you have, it's not the material gain, it's your character, your integrity.
Lois.
Yes.
Sorry, Brian, then Lois. But sorry.
Oh, I defer to Lois. You go ahead, Lois.
No, don't defer to me. Go ahead.
Now, don't be too polite.
All right. I like the line that Anne says, I'll bring you meat and wine to comfort you. Free, I protest, from all unchaste pretense. That's fun. There are lots of things to think about that. One is that at first it seems utterly unmotivated. I was just thinking about, she's hiding him from people who want to kill him or have him put to death, I suppose, or at least ruin his life. And here she is reassuring him or herself or the audience, that there's nothing unchaste in this. It hadn't occurred to me that there was.
Yeah.
But maybe there is. Maybe she says that because she does feel something from him. And both of them are very concerned with the shades of ethics, with whether what they're doing is morally right, with exactly what would justify or would not the actions they're taking. And it certainly fits in that. This is justified. It's not unchaste. It's okay. Here are all the reasons I'm doing it. It's very fussy in a way. It's fun.
Yeah, but also her like the time you get to like hear her thoughts, like because she does have like, you know, has a monologue and stuff without anyone else being on stage, is actually quite interesting. Lois, sorry.
Yeah, well, I was going to comment on the word gentleman because I think Constantine was using it mainly in the sense of moral values, but of course it has a social status implication as well. I mean, she's helping him partly because he is a gentleman, not some sort of plebeian. And, you know, being a gentleman was absolutely crucial. I mean, having gentle status, people just go on about it all the time in this period. It's the big dividing line, the thing that makes people respect you as opposed to, you know, just treating you like dirt. I mean, the awful thing about the situation of Philip and Susan is that they're not being treated like gentle folk, and yet they are. They're being treated appallingly by, you know, by Philip's brothers.
Yeah, this is true. Yeah, it's so harsh. I think Constantine had something to say then.
Well, no, I mean, when I use the word gentleman, I was referring to both because, you know, as Lois mentioned, and I've noticed how Anne says, I don't want to cause them more harshness. So the idea that there's still the gentleman, and I think we'll also see what the clown does. I mean, there's always this idea of, again, we shouldn't forget that Philip is also the firstborn too, and I think that's an important position.
His son, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, just one thing. We had a word come up yesterday of hind, which I queried as to whether it was actually should be hand, but I'm assured by Lois that it was the term for a farm worker. But you could almost imagine it if done in a sort of upper crust accent. Yeah, oh, he's one of our hinds, you know.
It works, maybe. Yeah, I was just perplexed by the I think it was John's line, I know the way to my father. Does that basically mean like, you know that I'm going to tell on you if you don't do what I want?
Yeah, and that's what she says right after that anyway.
It's so harsh though.
Oh yeah, horrible brothers. Yeah, something dreadful is going to happen to them, but it won't. They'll repent. I can see it now.
Repentance.
It's that kind of play.
Yeah. What I was caught off guard by was the interrogation that Anne does for, like, she interrogates him quite, like, well, not severely, but I mean, it's kind of like, so maybe it's a bit like leading the witness just a little bit. But it's like, so you didn't kill him foully? No, I protest. Nor willingly. Maybe. It's kind of.
And would you want him to be still alive? I mean, I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. There's something very interesting about that exchange, which I feel like we can't talk about enough, but I don't know if that's just me, because it's like the A plot crosses over with the other A plot, or well, A1 and A2, or A1 and anyway, yeah.
A team and B team.
Yeah, but then that supposes that the B plot is less important. Anyway, which is why I didn't call it a B plot. I guess, I don't know, maybe. Also, what caught my attention finally for this scene was basically what Old Harding says. I had some more, like, he sort of learns that Rainsford was great at faults. So basically it was his fault, or as in he had many flaws as a character. And yeah, so basically is much allied to noblemen and stuff, and much pitied, but law must have its course. I feel like I need someone to explain that bit, because Lois.
Well, I think he's saying that from everything he's heard, Rainsford is to blame, and everybody's rather sorry for Forrest, who was a decent guy, but that Rainsford has all the connections and the wealth, and that's why Forrest is going to be in deep, deep trouble. Yeah.
But then, yeah. Sorry, there's
the
a
law
part.
must have its course. I mean, they feel
Yeah.
sorry, but I mean, but by law, if he's killed somebody, he will be killed if he's caught. Yeah.
Yeah, Alan. Yeah.
Yeah, we're back to the trope which has existed since time immemorial, that the posh kids can get away with it.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. But then I don't know. It's like this whole thing about like a noble soul and all that stuff feels kind of counterintuitive when you consider that Old Harding has sort of debased his own son. I don't know. It's a different type of crossing the line, I guess. Like he hasn't killed somebody; he's married somebody. Which I don't know. Lois has.
Yeah, I see what you mean. That it's surprising that Old Harding is actually coming out with a sensible assessment of the situation, given the way he's behaved up till now towards his own son. It is really as if his attitude to Philip is a bit of an aberration. I mean, he seems like a nice guy when he first appears, delighted with his wife and making this joke about how she's already given birth to 2 sons because his sons have now become hers, and then. But it's just, Philip won't do what he wants and won't marry the sort of girl he wants him to marry. And so he just completely loses it. And then once he's made a vow, that's it. So, but it does seem weird that he should be prepared to treat his own son and daughter-in-law like servants. And it's not clear how much he knows about how badly William and John are treating them. I mean, it may be that he's not quite as nasty as they are. Yeah,
true. Yeah, it's just an interesting speech because it shows that he is human. He's not like just a monster, so to speak. Moving on then to Act 3, Scene 1. Enter Philip and the clown.
Come, good fellow Phil, what nothing but mourning and mowing. Thy melancholy makes our teams to veil their foretops, and all our jades crestfallen. And to see thee wail in woe, in the deep cart ruts, up to the bellies plunge in pain. My mistress Susan, she's in the same pitiful pickle too.
Oh, if this hand could execute for her all that my cruel father hath imposed, my toil would seem pleasure, labor, ease.
Ease? What's that? There's little to be found in our house. Now we have loosed the plough in the field, don't find work enough about home to keep us from the scurvy. Your hat, Phil, see, here comes our mistress. Here comes our mistress.
Enter Anne Harding with the bread in a bottle. Sorry.
The place is clear. None sees me now. Now's the time to bear my sorrowful charge, bread, meat, and wine. These 6 days I have kept him undiscovered. Neither my husband's nor my servant's eyes have any way discovered him. How now, fellows? Whither so fast? This way.
Nay, we do not use to go too fast for following. Our business at this present is about a little household service.
What business have you this way?
We are going, as they say, to remove, or according to the vulgar, to make clean, what Chanticleer and Dame Paulet, the hen, have had some doings.
What dost thou mean by that?
By my master's appointment, I must not say my father's. By my master's appointment, I must not say my father's. He hath commanded us first to make clean this hen roost, and after to remove the hay out of the hayloft.
Oh, I fear me the gentleman's betrayed. What shift shall I devise?
By your leave, mistress, pray, let's come by you.
Well, double diligence your labor has saved. 'Tis done already. Go and take your pleasure, son Philip. When I heard my husband speak of such a base employment, I straight hired a laborer to prevent it, and 'tis done.
You're kinder, mother, than my father cruel, and saved me many a toil and tedious travail imposed on me by your husband.
O'er this place I'll bear a jealous and a watchful eye to prevent this discovery. And will you be gone?
Yes, sweet mistress, if you could but give a wink, a word to the dairymaid for a mess of cream twixt my fellow Philip and I. It's good to be doing something, for my master does not love we should be idle.
Well, sir, perhaps I shall remember you.
Come, Phil, let's be gone, and if you chance to blush at what my mistress hath promised, I'll tell you who cast milk in your face.
Exit the clown and Philip.
Shall I compare his present misery with the misfortunes of this gentleman? Which might I reckon greater? But I leave them, and to my charge. We all must yield to fate. He casts us down that best can raise our state.
And enter Susan with something in her apron.
Oh, through what greater plunges can I pass than I have done already? A father's penury, the good old man dejected and cast down, my husband even swept from the family where he was born, and quite forsook by him by whom he should be fostered, made a servant amongst his servants, and his brother's scorn. These mischiefs make me wish myself unborn.
Again prevented.
Ah, how hath this meditation drawn my thoughts from my intended business? I forgot what I was sent about. My master bade me scatter this wheat and barley amongst the hens, and I will soon dispatch it.
What makes thee so near the place that I so strictly guard? What business have you here?
Forsooth, my master bade me go serve the poultry.
Come, you shall not, for this time I'll do it for you.
Oh, mother and mistress too, 'tis courtesy in you to proffer it, but should I suffer, you might hold it justly in me small manners.
I say it shall be so.
Shall any servant stand still and see her mistress do her work? Pray pardon me. I should condemn myself beyond imagination, should I stand idly by and see the work done by your hand.
I say I will.
My words dare not say nay, but my more forward action brooks no stay.
Then doubtless he's betrayed.
What's here? Here's one that's come to steal your hens, a thief who'll filch your poultry.
'Tis not so.
Shall I cry thieves aloud?
For heaven's sake, no.
And young Forrest leaps down. Earlier, basically, young Susan had gone to the hen house where young Forrest is hidden.
Betray then, hapless Forrest. Once more I lie, ordained for pity or prepared to die. What, none but women, and betray me? Then I see your hearts are flintier far than men.
Think not that I'll betray you, nor shall she, if she respect my love or her own life.
Betray my brother? It shall ne'er be said I stopped his flight when he had means to scape.
Oh, fortune beyond hope, amazed I stand to see my life laid in my sister's hand.
Dear brother.
My sweet sister.
A strange greeting, and twixt two hapless creatures, happy meeting.
What change hath brought you to this downcast state?
Nay, what mishap hath ruinated you?
You both forget your dangers, then leave off these passive fits, and study for the safety of this distressed gentleman your brother, now in the ruthless mercy of the law.
Sister, you've heard my fortunes.
With sad cheer, little surmising you had laid so near. Dear mother, let us crave your further assistance in furthering his escape.
I am all yours.
My safety lies in sudden expedition. Debar me, I am dead.
I have a brother, lives at Gravesend, an owner and a merchant, and could we but convey you safe to him, he soon would ship you over into France.
All ways are laid, and hue and cry sent forth through every hundred. How shall I reach thither without discovery? There stands an empty trunk in the next room, which should be sent by water to Gravesend, to your brother. What if we should lock him fast in that?
I like it well, but whom shall we employ to bear it safe?
Give it my husband and your man in charge. They too will see it carefully delivered.
By them I'll write unto him earnestly in your behalf, and doubt not of your usage.
The trunk, oh, quickly, if you love me.
Come, I'll too write.
I'll find those that shall bear it.
The plot is likely, but heaven knows I fear it.
And they all exit. Ta-da! I think Lynn is disappointed now, but I mean, Because
No, it's actually, I mean, it's silly, but it's kind of cute. Brother and sister, like, oh, I'm betrayed. Oh, it's my sister, thank God, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, no, my brother. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, it's sort of ridiculous because, like, what are the chances? But I'm a sucker for this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a nice escape in a trunk. Yeah.
Yeah. Alan.
To quote you, Eric, what could possibly go wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Constantine. You muted yourself and then unmuted
I just
yourself.
muted myself. Yes,
Yeah.
sorry. I like when Anne says we all but yield to fate. That's an interesting line. And of course, when she mentioned her brother, the merchant, and France, and I thought, here comes the sea part.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we have the land part, which is the forest, and then now we're going to the sea, right? But I'm wondering if, well, I won't say it now. I don't know. But it's interesting. I mean, of course, we're playing with fate and the idea of both brother and sister have fallen on hard times, and then we have Anne, who's very sympathetic to everybody, which. Well, it's interesting because in the beginning, didn't Anne say to Harding, like, you won me over? I wonder what he did to win her over, because at this point, Forrest has no money, right?
No, he doesn't.
Right?
Right.
Brian?
Right.
Yeah, in response to that, what he did to win her over was, it seems to me that what happens in that scene is they recognize each other as kindred spirits, or at least she recognizes him as one, by their odd conversation about the gradations of ethics. She asks questions that make sense to him, and he gives immediate and clear answers that make sense to her. And they recognize themselves, potentially at least, as being of a similar spirit. And then it's followed up in this scene where a brother and sister meet each other and unexpectedly recognize a kinship there. It feels like in this world where things go wrong and fathers suddenly turn bad and people die suddenly in quarrels, it's rather refreshing when you manage to find someone who feels the same way you do.
Brian,
have support.
Sorry, Brian, just for clarification, are you referring to Anne and her husband?
No, sorry, I was referring.
No, that's what I was talking about. That's what I was talking about. In the beginning.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, she tells Harding, her husband, that it took a long time to get her to consent.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I have no idea why, but presumably, I don't know whether and we just don't know. I mean, she just says that, but she also says that this means that she'll be faithful and that she's thought about it and she's serious about it, even though he's so much older than she is, which is a point that they both make, I think.
Yeah, even
maybe
though
he was
she's careful.
Sorry, go on.
Ahead.
Don't get too excited.
No,
Brian, then Constantine, then Lynn, and maybe Rachel. No, because Rachel is one of the main characters in this.
Yeah, it's fun that one of the first things we know about Anne is that she is taking careful ethical positions. I didn't come by this decision lightly, and that means that I will stay with you and be true.
Constantine?
Well, I thought, maybe in the beginning, Harding was a different man, because there are some sense that he has some sense of decency, or at least some sensitivity. Maybe old age, and I shouldn't say that. That sounds ageist, but maybe, his fortunes have fallen, so he's not as rich as he used to be. Maybe that has altered his personality. I don't know.
I think Forrest is the one whose fortunes have really fallen.
Yeah.
I think Harding's doing okay.
Sorry, I meant the other way around. Sorry, I got confused. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I think Harding's behavior to Philip is possibly a sort of aberration. I mean, just he's determined to have his older son obey him, and if he won't, then he goes up the wall.
Well, I guess also behaving like the way you behave in public and to your lover might be different to the way you behave to your son or offspring. I don't know. I'm guessing. Lynn, then maybe someone else. I don't know. Yeah, Lynn. Sorry.
Yeah, one thing I was gonna draw attention to is that Constantine made the observation that we have a couple of youngish male characters, young Forrest and Philip, who both fallen on hard times, but both seem to be decent characters. There's a little parallel there, and then Anne draws our attention to it at the beginning of this. Shall I compare them? It was sort of interesting that Constantine noticed that, as us literature nerds will do. And then the play says, oh, by the way, and the question of why did Anne marry old Harding? I mean, I don't know that we need to know, but it also doesn't seem to me completely unlikely. Younger women marrying older men was not unusual in this period. Women died people died young frequently. About 2% of childbirth resulted in the mother's death. So younger women marrying older men was not it was fairly normative. You get the feeling she's not from wealth, but he is pretty well placed. And women got married. You got married or you joined a convent. That was basically what you did. So she's got to get married. This well-to-do, seemingly nice man seems very interested in her. She might not have had other offers from younger men. Her family probably approved. What with one thing and another, this guy seems as good as the next guy. So it doesn't really strain credibility that she married him.
This is true. Alan, yeah. Then
I'm just
Constantine.
wondering, changing tack slightly, I'm just wondering whether we've got a bit of a theological debate going on here with the reference to fate and so on, and some setting out of some fairly moralistic approaches. And I'm wondering whether this is part of the sort of the turmoil of the various sectaries which were around at this point in time, because we're very early in James's reign, aren't we? I think from the suggested date.
Well, it depends, because it could be 1607 or it could be 1616.
Yeah, but there was still a number of competing sects around. And I'm just wondering whether there is a bit of theological debate going on here.
Lois.
Yeah, the trouble with discussions of fate is that, it can suggest a belief in predestination and Calvinism. On the other hand, everybody was so soaked in classical literature, which it constantly emphasizes fate, that I'm not sure that all references to it necessarily mean that people believe in, the sort of Christian version of that, which is divine predestination.
Yeah. Constantine and Lynn?
Well, I just wanted to go back. I find it interesting that the playwright needs to show that Anne had to be won over. She wasn't forced. So is the author saying something about her character? Again, we see when she meets Forrest, she asks him all these questions to get to understand his character. So there is a sense of agency in Anne, right? That we don't normally see. I just find that interesting.
Yeah. Lynn.
The convention in the period was that the woman always had to be won over. Even if she was very interested, she kind of had to play hard to get. Courtship is actually very stereotyped. We don't notice it because it seems normal to us, but courtship rituals tend to be actually quite boilerplate, and the man woos and the woman holds out and finally says yes, was the pattern even for young people who were very definitely interested in each other. But going back to the idea of like, is it fate or is it predestination? And I can't find the line now, but Anne says in her little speech about we all have to yield to fate, but then she switches to a pronoun, I think,
he who
that
holds
isn't
our
feminine, isn't neutral. Yeah. She says he that
he casts us down that best can raise our state.
Right, and that's God. So that's actually a sort of really interesting kind of verbal reflection of the kind of sort of dual view of reality that that Lois was talking about. That there's the classical "it's all fate," and there's the Calvinist "it's predestined by God." Those are kind of both present in that speech. She mentions fate, but then she says he, obviously referring to an all-powerful divinity.
This is true. I was kind of hoping, I have to admit, at the beginning of the scene when Anne basically shoos off Philip and the clown, I was having a moment of, is Philip actually going to meet Forrest, or does this just not happen? But apparently it doesn't, at least not at the moment. So basically, with Forrest safely in the trunk, what can possibly go wrong, as we said, we move on to Act 3, Scene 2. Enter Old Harding, John, and William.
Now, boys, no question but you think it long to have my estate made over to your use.
Oh, Lord, sir.
To have your eldest brother quite disabled of any challenge of inheritance?
We think it not long, sir, but if you should use all expedition possible, I should say, beshrew their hearts that would hinder it. We do not wish our brother disinherited, but if it be your pleasure, heaven forbid that we, being your sons, should any way contradict it.
We should not show ourselves obedient sons to persuade you to infringe your former vow. For, father, if you remember, you swore long since to do it, and heaven forbid you should break your oath.
Boys of mine own free spirit, mine own heart, and will you see him pine, beg, starve, nay, perish, ere you will once relieve him?
If it be your will, we'll swear to do it.
And though the beggar's brat, his wife, I mean, should for the want of lodging sleep on stalls or lodge in stocks or cages, would your charities take her to better harbor?
Unless to cold harbor, where of 20 chimneys standing, you shall scarce in a whole winter see 2 smoking. We harbor her? Bridewell shall first.
Lads of my own condition, my own humor, call me a scrivener. Reach me the pen and ink. I'll do it immediately.
For scrivener, Jack.
Meantime, post thou for pen and ink.
Before Anne enters, can we just talk about this? Because it's like, okay, the boys at the beginning were quite like, they weren't like terrible sons at the beginning of the play, but they weren't the best. But now they're just mean. And yeah, Rachel and Alan.
The contrast between this pair of siblings and the pair of siblings in the previous scene is really quite pronounced. The siblings in the previous scene are really quite caring and have moral standards, and these two are quite devious.
Yeah. Also, it's like we can't possibly wish you to do this, but if you do, we won't ever do anything to contradict it. Alan.
And you have promised. You need to stick to your promise, Dad.
Yeah.
Seems to me we've almost got into pantomime territory with with John and William as the ugly sisters.
Maybe.
Yes, I actually very like it. I mean, especially when you consider that Philip is in the Cinderella role, and Susan really is behaving like Cinderella. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Although he complains more than Cinderella did.
This is true.
Yeah.
Yes, but he was a gentleman. Cinderella was never gentle. Noble, I don't know, gentlewoman, I don't know, gentle lady. Sorry. Okay, Anne, go ahead. Enter Anne Harding, meeting them.
Anne, who seems to have been listening at the keyhole.
Yeah.
Stay, no such haste. Sweet husband, there be fitter times than these made choice for such affairs. There's no enforcement to make your will, being in such perfect health. Pray, if you love me, do not talk of death, nor to your safety give such ill presage. Besides, this expedition in your sons shows that they covet more your lands than life. Defer it then somewhat longer, for my sake.
Then, for thy sake, I will. But, my kind boys, 'tis rather to soothe her than your least wrong. I will delay a little, though not long.
It hath been long a-doing. I would it were once done. If he should peek over the perch now, and all fall to our elder brother, used him so doggedly, the least he could do is to thrust us out of doors by head and shoulders.
Let him alone now. We'll urge him to do it at a more convenient leisure.
When heard you from your brother at Gravesend, or how falls out his voyage, can you tell?
I had a letter from him 2 days since, in which he writes me all his goods are shipped, his wares in hold well stowed, and nothing wants save a fair gale to bring him to the straits.
Heaven make his voyage prosperous, for thou knowest I have a venture of £500 entered with him. My fortune joins with his. If he succeed, it falls out well with me. If not, I'm likely to impart his loss.
Enter Old Forrest.
Sorry, I lost my script there. Oh yes, okay, yes. Enter Old Forrest. You are well found, sir.
Aye, what art thou, fellow?
You knew me in my pride and flourishing state. Have you forgot me now? As I remember, we two were bred together, schoolfellows, boarded together in one master's house, both of one form and like degree at school.
Oh, thy name's Forrest.
Then in those days your father, Mr. Harding, was a good, honest farmer, tenant unto my father. All the wealth he purchased, far be upbraiding from me, came from us, as your first raiser, and you called me then your landlord and young master. Then was then, but now the course of fortune's wheel is turned. You climbed, we fell, and in that inconstant fate that hurled us down hath lifted you where we sate.
Well, we are lord of all those manors now you then possessed. Have we not bought them dearly? Are they not ours?
I no way can deny it. I rather come as a poor suitor to you, to entreat you, for heaven's sake and charities, to pity my lost daughter, your cost son. Sir, I in all had but 3 children left me, crutches to bear up my penurious age. One of these 3 was butchered cruelly, his body piteously, alas, pierced through. Then had I but 2 left, my eldest son, and he's or dead, or fled to save his life if he still live. I've wasted, sold, or spent in all that little that my fortunes left, and now have but one only daughter, and her I am not able to relieve with aught save tears and pity. To these helps, oh, lend your fair assistance. She is yours as well as mine.
All my part I disdain, both in my son and her. They crossed my pleasure, and they shall taste the smart. I was derided. They that love me shall by my will be guided.
And that am I.
And I too, father.
These parasites.
You ever pleased me well, and you shall mount the height from which they fell.
Enter Philip and Susan. See, alas, those that 7 summers since saw thy estate, and to look upon thee now would at least pity, if not help, thy wants. How happy was thy mother and my wife, that slept her last sleep long before these sorrows did take their birth.
Dear Father, succor us. Help to redeem us from this cruel man that thus insults upon our miseries.
Fair daughter, add not to my tedious woes. Thou bidst a blind man guide thee on thy way, and takest a broken staff to be thy stay.
Good sir, release us.
It must be then with tears, for other help I've none, and they, heaven knows, can little ease but help your woes. Sir, if your heart be not of adamant or some hard metal that's impenetrable, pity your blood and mine, so soon grown deaf. Kind gentlemen, speak to your ruthless father, show yourselves brothers. Do you turn aside? Fair mistress, what say you? I see your eyes in all things are with our passion sympathize. And you are doubtless sprung from gentle blood, gentry and baseness in all ages jar, and poverty and wealth are still at war.
Thou growest too tedious. Prithee, friend, be gone.
I hope you do not scorn me.
The truth is, I fain would have thee leave me.
'Tis no disparagement unto your birth that you converse with me. If I mistake not, sure, I am as well born.
And yet sure 'tis 10 to 1 I shall be better buried.
I am as honest.
Nay, there you are aground. I'm honester by 20,000 pound.
Are all such honest then that riches have?
Yes, rich and good, a poor man and a knave. Away, about thy business, loiter not about my gates. I shall compel thee else. For thy request, my will is peremptory. Thy softness makes me much more violent. Whom thou the most commiseratest, I contemn. They're in my deepest hate. Wife, sons, let's go.
Exeunt old Harding, Anne Harding, William, and John. With eyes in tears sunk, heart circumvolved in woe. Exit Old Forrest.
What shall we now do?
What but endure the worst? When comfort's banished, welcome all extremes. Yet I have sent my fellow or my man to prove some friends to help to stock a farm. I have not yet their answer. 'Tis the last of all our hopes. That failing, we have run our latest course, outcast, and quite undone.
Exit Susan and Philip. That was, yeah, I mean, it was an interesting scene from the beginning, but yeah, Constantine.
Well, this idea of the Wheel of Fortune. So we have Harding, now Forrest was the landowner and Harding was the farmer tenant, if I understand it correctly. So there's the Wheel of Fortune. So again, I guess the idea of fate. At one point you could be on top of the wheel, or you can be on the bottom of the wheel. And I noticed, and then Brian also wrote this, and poverty and wealth are still at war. We have that theme playing, right? The idea of poverty and wealth. So it's interesting, like anything could happen, this idea of fate. We don't know where it could lead us, but it also is related to somehow to the idea of nobility in both senses. So it's interesting where it's going. Now we can see how Forrest and Harding are similar yet opposite.
Yeah.
Brian.
Yeah, I so far definitely do not see this play as deeply involved in theological issues. It can't help but stir them up since they're resonant for the time and they do echo here and there. But the fact that we had just talked about it made me a little more alert to the part where old Harding says that rich people are good and poor people are knaves. Because that made
by
me
definition,
think,
right? Like,
yeah, God blesses those with worldly wealth who deserve it.
Yeah, it's like I totally didn't cheat at this. Yeah, just like are all such honest then that riches have is such a good line. It's but then I find it interesting that there isn't really any enmity or adversity between them other than the fact that old Harding is treating his son like crap. And his
daughter,
yeah, but I mean, it kind of like Old Forrest isn't very, like, he has these, like, moments of, oh, you really think you're honest, do you? But he can't really do anything about it, so he doesn't act out. Lynn, then Alan.
Well, Alan was first.
Oh, Alan.
Well, I must admit, I'm thinking that we've got something which I suspected was going to happen yesterday, which is we've now got this merchant voyage, which, if it goes pear-shaped, is going to see Harding brought down on the wheel, as it were, and maybe Old Forrest will rise in consequence. But there's a message for the ages there, isn't it? You know, that one line about rich good, poor knave, you know, you could pick it off the front page of almost any mid-market paper in the last centuries.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lynn.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really striking exchange. Just because you're rich, you're honest. Yeah, basically. What I was going to say was, wish we'd had this little bit of backstory much sooner. Because it tells you that it's not like it's not that Philip really chose someone who was beneath him status wise. She was kind of above him when they were children, like childhood sweethearts. They've evidently known each other their whole lives. So if things had not gone quite the way they did, Harding might have been very excited to have his son marry the landlord's only daughter, but because that their financial situations basically flipped, now it's not okay. So yeah, I think it tells us a lot about that couple. That it also makes us kind of feel even more sympathy for them. Like they've known each other their whole lives. You know, they're high school sweethearts, and they want to get married. And it's not their fault that their father's fortunes have reversed the way they did. It makes them even more of an awe, you know.
Yeah.
I had put my hand up because I was going to say the same thing, but Lynn said it very well, so I won't.
Lois.
Well, I was just going to say that it seems that at the end of the scene, somehow or other, Philip and Susan have ceased to be servants in Harding's house, and they're trying something else. And apparently, he's going to, if he can manage to get people to finance a small farm, they're going to try to make an independent living that way, because anything is better, clearly, than their present situation.
Yeah,
but it's not very clear how they got out of this. I mean, of course, they were in it by their own choice. Yeah.
It sounds like you fired them. Yeah.
Constantine.
Well, yes, Lois, that's interesting, because what is Philip doing now? He's taking control of his fate. He's not accepting his situation. He's trying to improve it, right? So, and it's not based on his position or what he has from his father. He's making his own fate, his own. He's taking control. He's not passive.
Alan.
Yeah, the other thing I've noticed is this play does seem to skip forward through time with gaps. You know, you've got several days gap between scenes in some cases. So he's actually playing around with the unities in terms of time, at least.
Yeah. Yep.
Which is slightly discombobulating until you actually work out. And there do seem to be quite a number of things which are happening or which are being said, but they're coming out in a slightly weird sequence.
Yeah, true.
As was said, you know, if we got a bit of the backstory about the history between the two old men, or the two ones who are described as old, if we'd had that story earlier, it would have made things a lot more straightforward to understand.
Yeah. Brian?
Yeah, there was sort of a tonal shift for me in Philip. The point, the scene where he suggests and asks that that he be taken on as a servant. His language in that is entirely submissive. It's his idea. It's his suggestion. He urges them to it. He seems to accept that position, proposes it, and accept it himself. And it felt to me in that scene when we were reading it like a patient Griselda model. Like, I'm going to take on all this, and I will suffer, and you will see. But this is my role. This is my fate. I will do what I have to do. And then ever since then, he's been complaining about it. And you could reconcile that in performance by having him be much more desperate and reluctant about the proposal at the beginning. But as I read it, that was a weird shift.
Yeah,
It is a weird shift. Sorry, yeah.
maybe he thinks that, by staying close to his father, he'll get his father to change his mind eventually. But then, he probably, nobody would realize just how appallingly they were going to be treated.
Right.
By William and John and his father. The whole thing just becomes increasingly unbearable for both of them. And so I guess they basically just decide that, essentially leaving the security of this house and trying to strike out on their own is the only thing left for them.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like, but it's a little bit as though Philip blames his father for not having read the same plays and not responding to his submission with kindness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alan, you had a point to make?
Yeah, I was basically going to make a very similar point, but I was half expecting that the two youngsters, having delivered the chest to the merchant with young Forrest inside, might have actually stayed aboard with it and disappeared off to sea.
Yeah, you never know.
That was the way I saw the thing going, and that would have made some sense.
Yeah. The I have to admit, the more I think about it, the more I think this scene actually fits where it is, because then at the beginning you've got that line that Old Harding says about like sort of, oh, you married the daughter of that guy, sort of like he doesn't quite say it quite like that, but they're poor, we can't you must be cast out because there is this, you can't possibly, basically what Constantine is doing. Pretty much. And yeah, this is the explanation once it gets to like the most desperate point, I guess. I don't know. Maybe it needs to be played at pace to be like fully appreciated, or maybe it just needs a reshuffle. I don't know. I'm intrigued. So we should probably move on. Act 3, Scene 3. Enter the merchant reading a letter, and after him, young Forrest.
My sister writes how your occasions stand, and how you are to use my secrecy in a strange business that concerns your life. She hath left nothing unremembered here, or slightly urged to make me provident careful of your safety. Gentle sir, though I'm a stranger to your fortunes, yet for her sake whose love I tender dearly, I'm all yours, my house to entertain you, my purse to furnish you in any course. My ship, if you're to sea, is at your service. Make choice in which of these, in all or any, you will employ my faithful industry.
Oh, sir, your unexpected courtesy to a poor stranger challenges the name of brother to the kindest gentlewoman that ever breathed this air. You cannot choose to be of but one strain that such kindness use. You bade me make choice of all your favors. My poverty and my necessity do both of them. In my extremes can serve to make me think the meanest of any means that can unplunge me from this gulf of trouble. To be much better than I can deserve, to be much greater than I dare desire, being too poor to merit, too dejected to aim at any hopes.
You wrong your worth. You have desert sufficient, and she writes in your behalf, and I commend her for it, and methinks I see such honest parts in you, that upon weaker urgence than these lines I would build much affection on these gifts, which I see nature hath endowed you with. Indeed, I flatter not. None flatter those they do not mean to gain by. 'Tis the guise of sycophants, such great men to adore by whom they mean to rise. Disdain the poor. My object is much otherwise intended. I fain would lose by him whom I commended.
If ever thus my weak ability grows strong again, I will employ it solely to shun the base sin of ingratitude towards you and your fair sister.
Will you use me?
But what shall I return you in exchange of those great favors?
Ah, come, your love, 'tis more all I can attempt for you amounts unto. Pray, let me know the most of my employment.
Then will you provide me safe waftage over to France, to Flanders, or to Spain, or any foreign coast? I dare not trust my native country with my forfeit life. Sir, this is all I would entreat of you.
You're modest in your suit. The more you use me, the more I think you love me. Therefore, this night I'll get you wafted over to France. Such sea apparel as I use myself, you shall accept part. Here's 10 pounds in gold, and whatever you shall live hereafter. Pray let me once a year receive from you some brief or note. I'll not return your love idle or empty-handed.
My life's yours, and lesser satisfaction than my life is much too little.
Much too much. No more, no more. I do entreat you. I am now upon a voyage to the Straits myself, but 'twill be 2 days hence.
Heaven be your guide as I find you. So find friends in your need. Blushing, I run to your countless debt, more sons of love than all my hoard can pay. But if these black adventures I survive, even till this mortal body be engraved, you shall be lord of that which you have saved.
Oh, only your love come will provide this night for your safe waftage and your secret flight.
And they exit. I'm trying to count how many times he said love in that scene. It's just, it's like, especially right after having like, I will hate them in the previous scene. You get like love, and more love. And I was like, is this a gay moment? But I mean, I don't think that would have played. I just wanted it to be, but it doesn't really matter, does it? Constantine.
He's a merchant. He's always at sea. He's in need of love all the time. No,
probably.
It's interesting how he, like his sister, he automatically sees Forrest's real character, right? And he's very kind, and he's willing to help. So we have certain characters that are very sympathetic, and they have a great sense of character, right? They automatically realize his true self. And again, interesting what's happening with the merchant here in the sea. I think there's something important happening with the sea, and where Forrest, again, I think like Philip, I think his fate is going in another direction. So there's interesting how he says, where is it? At one point he talks about poverty himself. Where is it? He says, but whom they mean to rise, oh, of sycophants, such great men to adore, by whom they mean to rise, disdain the poor. So again, that the trope and that theme is coming up. So it's interesting how it mirrors, like he's a merchant, so he gets his wealth from the sea and from foreign areas, and then we have the other two who are more land-based. But it's interesting. Anyway, I'll stop.
Well, also you kind of like he's the brother of Anne, who we saw earlier, and there's a part of me wondering if he was a merchant before Anne got married or not, because okay, he probably wouldn't, because I think Harding had mentioned that he took her dowerless and stuff, or she mentioned it, I can't remember, which was quite well, I imagine it was scandalous back then. I don't know if it is. So yeah, it's interesting, the whole games of status being played in this play. Alan.
Yeah, well, you've also got the situation that Harding has basically said that he has got money invested in this voyage that the merchant is taking. So I suspect there was a commercial connection between the two of them prior to the marriage. And I'm not sure that you can actually say that there is a significant distance between the merchant and the two old men, other than that they're all in trade. It's just that the one who's starred as merchant is actually traveling on the business, whereas the other two are shore-based and effectively taking the goods when they've been landed.
Yeah, Rachel.
I know that these two are sincere, and we're supposed to read them as sincere, but I find the scene overplays it. So it overplays it could be half the length and be more effective. I think I begin to turn against them. They're so effusively nice.
It's like, they're too good. I can't take you anymore. Go away. But not quite like that. But I mean,
I love you.
Ryan,
I love you. I love you.
pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yeah,
Right.
the overplaying of the great pleasure of suddenly finding that in your misfortune you are now in the hands of a sympathetic character. The overplaying of that reminds me very much of Dickens, and in particular the RSC production of Nicholas Nickleby. There's a moment where Nicholas falls in the hands of the brothers Cheeryble, and they have a similar scene where the two brothers are outdoing each other in delight, emphatically trying to be benefactors to Nicholas, and that's what it feels like.
That is an interesting connection.
Yeah,
Yeah.
heading in a sentimental direction here.
Yeah. No, I'm just wondering about the tragi-comedy part, but I mean, that's probably like still to come, because we don't have the resolution of all these plot lines just yet. So I guess the comedy part is just like the less bleak part. He says, Lynn or Rachel then, or no? Rachel.
I know I'm mildly cynical, but I would have preferred the scene if the merchant were trying to entrap Forrest or put him in further danger, and that Forrest needed some rescuing here. But I think it would be more dramatically interesting. But
To be fair, going to sea was not. I mean, it still isn't safe. Having, as you can see by watching the news.
True.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Shall we move on to the next scene, because we do have two more? Yeah, I think two more scenes. I might have lost count. Act 3, Scene 4. Enter Clown, Foster, Goodwin, and a gentleman.
Speak with us? Why, what's the business?
Nay, that's more than I can resolve you upon the sudden. It may be there's some great fortune fallen to him of late, and he would impart the benefit to you.
Nay then, let's go. Where shall we find him?
A word to the wise, it may be that he's in some monstrous extreme necessity, and would gladly borrow some money of you, or so.
Aye, sayest thou so? Now I remember me, I needs must home. I have some business. I'll see him at some other time.
Nay, but one more word.
We cannot stay now.
Nor I. A great occasion calls me hence.
Nay then, I see you are apt to take a man, the worse still. If you knew what little need he hath to borrow, quoth he, a good jest. You know, he and I, my fellow Phil and I, amongst other works that my master uses to put us to, used to dig and delve. Now, if we have found a pot of money, we would trust you with the laying of it out. Why so?
How?
Marry, even so. You know his father is such a dogged old curmudgeon. He tells not, for his ears acquaint him with it.
Pretty, go on.
'Twere kindness in him to choose you out of all the friends he hath in the world to impart this benefit, 'twere not, and say true.
Troth, he was always a kind, honest youth, and would it lay in me to pleasure him?
In troth, or me, he should command my purse and credit both.
Where might we speak with him?
Hard by, sir, hard by, but stay, gentlemen, suppose there's no such matter as finding of money, but we missed it in digging to supply his present necessities. He hopes to find from you, I promise you. I partly doubt such a matter.
I forgot myself. I needs must home.
Troth, nor can I stay.
In sooth, nor I.
Exit Foster, Foster, Goodwin, gentleman going. Enter Philip, meeting them.
Oh, I'm kind of talk to myself here. Gentlemen, whither so fast? I seem to speak with you.
I can assure you, sir, they are better to speak withal than to borrow money of. One word or two with you, my friends, by your leave, master. Gentlemen, I love you well, and that you may know I love you, I would make bold to reveal a secret to you. My young master here, though you see him in these homely accoutrements, simply as you stand here, he has more to take to than I'll speak of. He might, marry, might he? He might go brave and shine in pearl and gold. He hath now in his instant possession 1,000 pound thick.
Pounds?
Nay, old lads, he hath learnt his 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 never cost him 10 shillings.
5,000 pounds?
You know where you hear it, mum. Here's your tell and your talesman.
Good, proceed.
Now lift up your large ears and listen. To whom he reveal all his wealth but to some friend? And how should he know a friend but by trying of him? And how should he try a friend but by troubling of him? And how should he trouble a friend but by borrowing money of him? Now, gentlemen, it may be at first he'll make his case poor and pitiful to you.
Only to try us.
Only to try you. Have you no brains? Do you think we have need of money? Has any of you occasion to use 100 pound? Need of money? I said before, so I say again, only to try you. He has done the like to 4 or 5 that I know. Now, because they would not pity his supposed poverty, he would not acquaint them with his infinite mass of wealth. You have wits, brains, apprehension. If he makes his case known to you, lay it on. If I say lay it on, lay it on. You are not everybody. If I had not seen some sparks in you, you had not been the men. Lay it on.
Enough. I understand thee fully. Kind Master Philip, will you use my aid in any fair employment?
Sir, or mine?
Or mine?
Worthy friends, even one as all, freely to speak, as you are gentlemen, and I from childhood have protested love, as you are Christians, therefore to the poor, such as I am, should be most charitable. Help with your plenty to revive my wants. You know my labor, and have seen my need. Then take some pity of my poor estate, and help to ransom me from slavery by lending me some money.
Did I not tell you so? Lay it on.
Sir, you shall have 100 pound of me.
What need you use him, myself so near?
Trouble not them, sir, you shall have it of me.
Take it, master, take it all.
Oh heavens, where slept this friendship all this while? Who said that charity was fled to heaven, and had no known abiding here on earth? See these that know me disinherited, and have no means to supply my wants, strive who should most engage his person credit to one so much oppressed with poverty.
Alas, sir, you see the kindness. I told you how strange he would make it. Lay it on.
Pray, sir, accept my kindness.
Pray, take mine.
Take it mine.
Pray, master, take the courtesies.
I'll use them all, and only borrow 20 pounds apiece to stock a poor farm for my wife and me. Some 60 pounds will do it.
Oh, now, lay it on.
Take it all of me.
Why all of you, sir? Is not mine as ready?
When one can do it, what need you trouble 3? But for the 1,000 pounds, sir, do not think, but you may trust me with the whole employment of all such moneys, and never trouble these.
1,000 pounds. Oh, though it be 6,000, I durst be steward of so great a sum.
Why, Master Fellow Phil?
Do you mock me, gentlemen? My wealth amounts not to 1,000 straws.
I told you he would make it strange. Lay it on.
Make not your wealth so dainty, for we know you have at least 6,000 pound in bank. You may impart it unto us, your friends.
Who hath deluded you, derided me, and made a mockery of my poor estate? Now I protest I have not in the world more riches than these garments on my back. Impossible. Why, here's my tail and my talisman.
No, sir, you are deceived. Here is your tail, and you yourself are your talisman, for you carry it about you. The truth is, gentlemen, that we have betwixt us but no more crosses than you see.
Only the hope of those 60 pounds promised by you, unurged and uncompelled, may raise my ruined fortunes.
Will you disperse it all that we're so forward?
I have no money. Do it you for me.
It is but one man's labor. Do it yourself. If you have done none, I have less. God be with you. One stays for me at home.
Nay, take me with you, sir.
Why, gentlemen, will you revolt your words?
I have no money.
But now you strive which man should lend me most.
But then we reckon, sir, without our host. Then we supposed you rich. But being grown poor, I've made a foolish vow to lend no more.
Exit Foster.
I have made the like. You know your father threatens to disinherit you, and should we lend, you being poor, should of our purses spend.
Exit the gentleman.
Though I be poor, heaven may enable me. Heaven may do much, that's all the beggar's saying. Let me hoard wealth, you seek for wealth by praying.
Exit Goodwin.
The time may come ere long, so I divine, to punish those that at their power repine.
Exit Philip. Enter a pursuivant, meeting the clown.
Whither away so fast, sirrah? In the Queen's name I command you stay.
What are you that look so big?
A pursuit one.
If you so Percy, can you lend us any money? I assure you it was the last business we were about, or else tell me the reason why you stay my passage.
Sirrah, I have a proclamation to publish, and because myself am something hoarse, and thou hast a large, wide mouth, and a laudable voice, I charge thee, the better understanding of the multitude, to speak after me, word by word.
If it be nothing else, do but advance me, and I'll speak high enough. Come now, and teach me my new lesson.
Whereas do famous rovers on the sea,
Whereas two famous rogues upon the sea,
Purser and Clinton,
that lost their purses at the clink,
long since proclaimed pirates,
long since proclaimed spirits,
notwithstanding Her Majesty's commission,
notwithstanding Her Majesty's condition,
still keep out,
and will not come in,
and have of late spoiled a ship of Exeter,
and have of late spoiled all the sheep in Exeter, Exchequer,
and thrown the chief merchant overboard.
and throw the merchant's cheeses overboard.
I, therefore, in Her Majesty's name,
I, therefore, the name of Her Majesty,
proclaim to him or them
and proclaim to them or lame
that can bring these pirate ships or heads
that can bring in these pie crust or sheep's heads,
£1,000 sterling,
1,000 stares and starlings,
if a banished man his country,
if a man he shall be banished his country,
if a condemned man liberty,
if a man at liberty condemned.
besides Her Majesty's especial favour,
Besides Her Majesty's spectacles in favour.
and so God save the Queen.
Oh, have you done now, sir?
I have. Farewell.
Exit the pursuivant.
Well, Master Pursuivant, he has so filled my head with proclamations.
Exit the clown. I mean that was traditional, like, sort of oh yes, don't understand anything fun. But I mean, Alan then Lynn.
Yeah, it almost feels like a comic riff that's crept in from somewhere else.
Yeah, from several decades ago.
And I think there are probably some links to the plots, but they're less than clear at the moment. But that was basically just the old misleading echo routine, which we've seen God knows how many times.
How many times? No, wait. Sorry, that's bad. Lynn, then Constantine, then Lois, then Brian, or are you just scratching your head?
I'll probably have something to say by then.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it it's an old gag, as Alan observed, but it does serve the plot. This is how Forrest and Susan are going to get back on their feet again, is that they will somehow, or young Forrest will capture the pirates, Purser and Clinton, get the reward, and have £1,000 seed money to get back on his feet. Another thing that's sort of interesting is that even though this is sort of in a way a city comedy, generically sort of contemporary, it is set in the previous reign. We're pretty sure this is a Jacobean play, but it talks about the queen, and it wouldn't be Queen Anne, it wouldn't be the queen consort, it would be the reigning monarch. So it's, again, it's a little exposition we could have used 3 acts ago, that this is imagined as taking place in the previous reign.
Lois and Constantine, then Brian? Yeah, maybe. No, I lost track, but yeah, go ahead.
Yes, well, I think the reason it's being imagined as in the previous reign is partly that they probably don't want to mention King James on the stage. But in fact, the actual situation here, and this is one of the reasons I think there's debate about the date of this play, at James's reign, when peace was made with Spain, a lot of privateers turned into pirates automatically. They'd been attacking Spanish ships, but Spain was the enemy. When Spain ceased to be the enemy, they were still attacking Spanish ships and other ships. And so they suddenly became criminals. And this was something that a lot of people at sea really were horrified by. It's one of these, massive sea changes, you could say, of morality, which caught a lot of people by surprise. So that these guys, Purser and Clinton, would probably have been legal, in fact, in Elizabeth's reign, and illegal in James's.
Or the laws simply weren't enforced in.
Constantine. Yeah, sorry.
It's interesting. Well, once again we see Philip. He's very honest. The clown is trying to trick these people from their money, but Philip is not only honest, but he's naive. He's not getting it. So it I don't know if it shows him to be a more sympathetic, a more honorable, more noble. He seems very naive in this. Yeah, he's daft. But it's interesting, when you mention is it Clinton, the pirate? Wasn't he? I remember reading somewhere that he was actually hanged in 1583. So to bring him in here, I mean, yeah, that doesn't mean anything. They've done this. They would bring in pirates here and there, but it's interesting to bring in a real person who was around in the 80s.
Purser and Clinton are both historical. Yeah.
But it's interesting. I wonder what the author is doing. But again, whether he's from 1580s or 1680s, I mean, we've seen this before, this anachronistic back and forth. But it's interesting that he brings in an actual first name and last name to realistic. So and as you mentioned, this at this point, how were pirates seen? Would he be seen as a swashbuckler? Would he see it outlaw? And again, we're playing with the idea of outlaw, right? We have, who is it? Is it Forrest who's running from the law? So we have somebody else running from the law, but is he doing it for good reasons, for noble reasons? That's why Anne is asking him, why did you do it? So I don't know. I mean, we'll see what the play has in store for us. But this bringing in the pirate and the idea of pirates and the seas is interesting.
Brian. Sorry, I had a thought, but I will mention it in a moment. Brian.
This scene is very different than what came before, the clown scene there. I guess we've switched from a number of scenes focused solely on the moral rectitude of various characters, or the degree that they do or don't have it, to an exposition scene. I guess I'm struck at this point about how much time we've spent. We said that when the merchant meets Philip, that there's a little too much of that, a little too much dwelling on how much they love each other. You might say that in the clown scene, there's a little too much back and forth of trying to persuade people to give money and reveal their actual venality The play just loves to dwell on the moral positions that almost solely define character up to now.
Yeah, true. Alan. Yeah.
I must admit, I'm becoming more and more puzzled with this designation of clown because he's shown himself to be considerably more literate than one would expect earlier on in the play, where he ended up quoting chunks of Latin. And the start of that previous sequence, before they got into the wordplay humour with the false echo, where he was being an extremely able shill trying to operate a Ponzi scheme. You know,
Well,
it's slightly bizarre as to what his character is.
well, I guess also because we've mentioned that both Heywood and Rowley played clowns. And I just like the bit. It's like they were praising themselves. You have a laudable voice, of course. So it's kind of, we will give you this part to make it funny. Brian?
Yeah, I was going to go back to the remark that Philip seems naive in comparison to the clown. I think what's happening is that we're being shown that Philip is honest. It's the clown who has the impulse to try and reveal their venality. Philip, like Forrest in the duel, is not doing anything wrong, doesn't intend to cheat anyone. And I think that part of what's being revealed is just a bit more of his virtuous character.
Mm-hmm. Well, also weren't these two the characters who kind of abandoned Forrest as soon as Rainsford went, yeah, we're out of here at the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So we kind of already know that they're not very nice. Alan.
Yeah, I mean, there's another bit of motivation you could put in there, which effectively Philip has been used to living as heir apparent within a wealthy household, whereas the person who's styled as clown, basically the only way he's going to survive is on what he can achieve by his own wits or cunning.
Yeah.
Which maybe links into that elegiac description he gave earlier of the alleged wedding feast. Basically, if there's food about, I want it.
Yeah. We should move on to the last scene of the session. Act 4, Scene 1. We actually get on board a ship this time. A great alarum and shot. Enter Purser and Clinton, with mariners bringing in the merchant, bound prisoner with others.
Now, valiant mates, you have maintained this fight with courage and with wonted hardiment. The spoil of this rich ship we will divide in equal shares, and not the meanest of any, but by the custom of the sea, may challenge, according to his place, rights in the spoil. Though outlaws, we keep laws amongst ourselves, else we could have no certain government.
A gallant prize, and bravely purchased, too, with loss of blood on both sides. A sea fight was never better managed, nor exploited, with more exchange of hostile opposition. We did not look for such a valiant spirit in any merchant's breast, nor did we think a ship of such small burden, so weak manned, would have endured so hot and proud a fight. Arr!
Oh, nor did I think the providence of heaven would so have favored men of base condition, such as profess wrong, piracy, and theft, have spoiled my men and ransacked every corner of my surprised bark, seized all my substance, and shared amongst you my best merchandise, and not alone undone me, and in me all that are mine, but in overwhelming us, shook the estate of all my creditors.
What's that to us? Men of our known condition must cast behind our backs all such respects. We left our consciences upon the land when we began to rob upon the sea.
You know we're pirates, and profess to rob, and wouldst not have us freely use our trade. If thou and thine be quite undone by us, we made by thee impute it to thy fortune, and not to any injury in us. For he that's born to be a beggar, no, however he toils and traffics, must die so.
If you must needs profess this thriving trade, yet since the seas afford such choice of store, you might, methinks, have spared your countrymen.
Nay, since our country have proclaimed us pirates and cut us off from any claim on England, we'll be no longer now called Englishmen.
Clinton, I know thee, and have used thy skill, and now in a good vessel of my own. Before thou took'st this desperate course of life, perhaps if now thou dost me a good office.
Troth, I could wish we had light of any other, but since thy fate hath cast thee upon us, we must neglect no opportunity, for they that intermit advantages. Opportunity. For they that intermit advantages must know occasion's head is bald behind. My merry mates, come top your cans apace, pile your chests with prizes to the lids, and stuff the vast hold of our empty ship with such rich wares as this our prize affords. Supply your biscuits with such choice of wines, and freely come, brought by the auspicious winds, to unlade themselves and seek for stowage here. Since wine comes freely, let's make spare of beer.
Let cans of wine pass round in healths through all. Such golden prizes come not every day, nor can we always meet such choice of spoils. First bind the merchant, lay him fast in hold, and having seized all his best merchandise, pierce with your ordnance through his ship's crazed keel, and sink her down into the deep abyss, where not all the cranes in Europe or the world can weigh her out again.
Let it be so, lest she prove prize unto a second foe.
Be as my fate shall please. My loss I value, but as goods lent me, now to be paid back. But what which most afflicts my sorrowful soul is that my friends have ventured largely with me, especially my sister, who I fear will brook that ill which I with patience bear.
Place him below the hatches as our prisoner. And now to part our purchase, bravely won, even with the hazard of our dearest lives.
The danger past still makes the purchase sweet. Come, first drink round, my merry mates. That done, divide in peace what we by war have won.
And they exit with drink. I imagine a drink in hand or something. I don't know. I feel like rum is appropriate, but that's probably of a later period. What on earth? Sorry. I mean, I know we got pirates like mentioned, but that was a very quick payoff. Constantine, then Lois.
Pirates? Where did the pirates come from? Reminds me of a play that I can't mention. But I know you, Clinton. You worked for me.
It used to work for me. I know, right?
But it's interesting now we have pirates. So these are landless people, right? They're not tied to the land, and they make their own fate. They have fate in their hands. They control. They're not part. They say we're not Englishmen anymore. They choose their identity. They choose who they are. So they're not part of this land or capitalism or status or class. They're their own class. Yes. And it's interesting. Like, again, why bring in an actual pirate? And I just want to go back. Okay, no, that's it. That's it.
Lois and Lynn and Brian. I'm losing track. Yeah.
Well, I suppose you could say that what this is doing is deliberately turning it into a historical play and setting it about 20 years before the performance. But in fact, that situation where Purser is blaming their country for casting them out by making them pirates, that really refers to what happened in 1604.
Lynn and Brian.
Yeah, I'm not really that exercised about where the pirates come from, but this scene is kind of bringing it back into what I remember of the tragicomic genre. One of the things, as I remember, a feature of tragic comedy is these crazy coincidences that have to happen in order to make the plot resolve in a way that we want it to happen. So we're being very efficient here, because the same plot device that is going to break Harding because he's got so much money invested in his brother-in-law's voyage is going to make Forrest, because he'll get the reward for turning them in. So 2 birds with 1 stone. We take Harding down a peg, or at least we have the threat of him being financially ruined. And then Forrest gets to be the hero by bringing the pirates to justice. That's my prediction.
Prediction for stay tuned for match predictions. Ryan, sorry.
Yeah, since my theme today has been that the only thing we care about in character is moral position, moral rectitude, I gotta be just fascinated that the very first thing we learn about pirates is a speech that has words like valiant, courage, custom, place, laws, and certain government.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We really don't know where to have the pirates.
Mhm.
And everyone else's moral place on the moral scale has been very clear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Lois.
Yeah, quite right. I mean, that first speech clearly establishes them as people that Heywood and Rowley are sympathetic towards. Yeah, I would just say that one of the sources of tragic comedy seems to be the kind of Greek romance of the about the 3rd century, I think it was. And in these, pirates figure quite a lot. I mean, characters are often at sea, and they're often captured by pirates, or they're shipwrecked. I mean, all the things that we associate with certain kinds of Elizabethan drama, Jacobean drama, and that's partly, I think, where this comes from. I mean, there were plenty of pirates anyway historically, but they do, and they're mentioned quite a lot. I mean, there's one really odd reference in Women Beware Women, where Bianca just suddenly says, when she's trying to get her husband off whatever he's talking about now, "Oh, what news of pirates?" As if, well, this, sort of like, how's the weather?
Yeah.
Well, I guess they were a substantial threat back then. Threat / in the news.
Yeah, there were. I think you've already read, haven't you, that one about Ward, who was also a historical character, that crazy play. Oh God.
Christian turned Turk.
Yeah,
I don't think we've read it yet, because it's a bit too
awful, but
difficult. It's very difficult to yeah.
Yeah.
I think when we come to that one, Rob will probably run the session. No, not me. Just because it's very awkward to talk about. Anyway, no spoilers for that one. But I mean, what I was thinking of is, this is typical Heywood. It's basically like Fair Maid of the West or something, or like just like she decides to sort of go to sea to find the man she loves, and then ends up becoming Bess the pirate. Well, not pirates, but I mean, yeah. She has Bess the captain of various ships and that kind of thing, and then she gives it all up for him anyway, which is very disappointing. Rachel, any thoughts, or were you not waiting? I can't tell. Oh no. Okay. So I suppose this means we are either wrapping up our thoughts, or yes, we should probably wrap up. Just looking at the time as well. Any thoughts on what we've read today or the play so far, Alan?
There's certainly no shortage of action in this play. I mean, fights, deaths, pirates, marine battle. It does seem, in modern terms, it would be an action movie, and it moves at such a pace that you don't actually recognise the lacunae in the way time is flowing, or the lack of explained motivation at the time of things happening.
I think motivation, though, wasn't invented at this point, though. Maybe, I don't know. Lynn?
Yeah. I'm going to go back for a moment to the observation that there's something really Dickensian about this story. The wealth of incident. You have good people and bad people. The chief vice in the bad people is greed, is avarice, and wealth inequality was a a concern of Dickens throughout his career. He basically always wrote about that. And the lack of charity on the part of people who had more. He didn't really envision sort of institutional solutions to poverty. He again and again, his stories tell us that it's incumbent on those with more to help those with less. Otherwise, you get crime and despair. So there's something, those themes really seem to be operative here as well. That capitalism creates winners and losers, and it's up to us as people to try to even things out a little bit. And just for the way the characters are drawn, too. There's something that really kind of reminds me of Dickensian characters, which I know is like totally anachronistic, but maybe it's a tradition that Dickens was tapping into when he wrote a couple hundred years later.
Maybe. Constantine, sorry.
I just wanted to go back to the clown, and he doesn't seem to be consistent. Could it be that because we have two playwrights, one wrote the first half and maybe the second half was written by the other? But I think, and then the other problem is where he seems to be this rustic servant and he uses Latin. I think he might be the illegitimate son of Harding.
You never know.
And he wants to get back at him. That's going to be an interesting reveal.
We can rewrite the ending if you want. I've not read the play, but if that's not the ending, then we can rewrite it to fit that.
We'll be like the pirates and take over the ship.
Yeah, totally. I think the clown, though, it makes sense because usually the position of the clown is to speak truth to power, and he kind of attacks whoever is in power in the scene, although at the beginning he does tell us that he will pick the stronger side. Constantine.
Well, and he is a foil for Philip, of course, right? To show what kind of person Philip is. It just keeps showing us that he's a very moral person, and he doesn't do things. He does things because they are right. He doesn't do them for personal gain. So I think the clown there, that bit where he tries to trick them out of their money, it's a foil for Philip. And in a way, he's like tempting him with riches, right? And he says, "No, I will not." Last temptation. So
you kind of hoped that he would elbow him and go, "Shut up," and then sort of like,
"I got this."
Yeah. Lois.
Yeah, I think he does at one point. He's saying something like, "Hey, my fellow Phil," and I think he's trying to tell him, aside, "Come on, just back up my story."
Tease it, yeah.
Yeah, but I think earlier in the scene with those guys, he's really just playing a game with them. First he says, the guy's broke. No, we've all got to leave. Sorry. Oh, but he's got lots of money. Oh, really? Oh, I'll lend him some. He does it a couple of times, and we find it rather long-winded, but it's clearly just manipulating them, showing what idiots they are, or how totally selfish they are.
Yeah.
And then he tries to play the same game again, and it's not even clear that he's really that bothered that Philip wrecks it. It's almost as if it were a game, I think.
Yeah. Wasn't expecting it to work necessarily.
Yeah.
It's very much that thing of he has money. He has money, but he will come on to tell you that he doesn't have money just so he can test you, because we've totally not seen that theme in other places. The London Prodigal, maybe, except that one is quite cruel as well.
There are a lot of plays in which something like that happens, and one's always amazed at the incredible credulity of the people that fall for it.
I'm trying to think. Brian, any final thoughts?
I guess I've been struck by the thought that if this were ever actually produced in a modern stage, people would be tempted to cut quite a bit, and I'm not sure that a modern audience would even feel the lack if you dropped 10% of what's there.
Easily.
Yeah. I'm just wondering whether they killed Rainsford so he can double with someone else, because that's what usually you kill people off for. in these plays, or costume changes or something.
Well, they
I
killed
don't
him
know.
off with the plot, but then he
Yes.
is doubling someone else. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Well, yes. Precise. Yeah. Yeah. Rachel, any final thoughts for this this session and what we've read so far?
I still think this is a big mess of genres. I don't know. It's a big mess.
That's pretty accurate. I mean, yeah. I think it was Alan who'd put in the chat it's a bit Gilbertian, sort of like Pirates of Penzance, except not quite. It's getting there though. We've slid into some other territory of fun, which is kind of,
and a long way from city comedy at this point.
Yeah. Alan,
We're out at sea.
I'm just wondering, in fact, whether this is Heywood doing things with scenes which he know will go down well with an audience, particularly with the groundlings, and not too worried about consistency or through line.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if we've had a through line aside from like the sort of pairs of siblings meeting and that kind of thing.
I think a lot will depend on how it eventually resolves, if indeed it does.
Yeah. Lois, sorry, you.
Yeah, well, the title is Fortune by Land and by Sea. And you might think that means, just how people win their fortune by land and sea. But of course, it's also just luck or, change. I believe that in the Italian theater, a backdrop showing a sea was called La Fortuna. The sea and fortune clearly go together, because once you put it out in a boat, you're risking everything. And it's either shipwreck or pirates about half the time in these plays. In fact, most of the time in these plays, it's the main reason for getting on a ship, so something awful can happen. And I think that the play is held together by this idea that it's all it's a fortune's wheel, or up and down. Everything is constantly changing, and both on land and on the sea. And that is really what it's about. It keeps you interested, because you never know, each scene, some dramatic change seems to happen to somebody.
Yeah. Lynn, any other or final thoughts?
No, that I just kind of wanted to sort of meditate on its sort of Dickensian flavor, at least from my point of view.
All right, so it's kind of like letting it steep in like water or something. And what else would you steep it in? Anyway, or rum. Now, I'm not encouraging the consumption of alcohol, by the way. It's just the typical, go-to drink that is, for pirates. If there are any other thoughts, have I skipped someone? I'm trying to remember this because my brain is firing at many things at me, but I don't think so. So if there are no other thoughts for today, I'd like to thank our wonderful readers for their wonderful reading. And goodbye. Have you no brains?